Virtually every person at some point in their life is seeking ways to heal, find some relief from the wounds that we carry from childhood, from adulthood, deeper wounds, lesser wounds. And I'm talking primarily about the psychological and emotional ones. Abuse, loss, pain, suffering, traumas, dysfunctionality, which in turn has led to fears and insecurities and inhibitions, things that hamper, impede our way of becoming the best we can be. And that leads, of course, to all different types of addictions and other forms of dissonance. Again, more extreme forms or less extreme, that we struggle with. How many hours of therapy? How many medications? Some helpful, some actually destructive. In the desperate search for relief. And very often, that search leads us to places that are just cosmetic, short-term, and actually create more problems than they solve. And everyone has to look at their own life and fill in the blanks. Nobody has come up with a proven and successful formula. Here and there. That's what psychology is. I would like to introduce you to a 3,337-year formula. Methodology. Time-tested. That goes back to the biblical times of Egypt, the Egyptian Exodus, that took place exactly that many years ago. That was far more than just a momentary event, a historical event, but actually monumental, that it unleashed and opened up an unprecedented new approach to how to deal with challenges, all types of challenges. And when we employ that, when we apply it to our lives, it literally can have a transformative effect. And this is a universal formula, even though, yes, it is based on the Jewish exodus of the Jews who were enslaved by the Egyptians. But its message and its approach is one that can be applied by everyone. So join me in this journey. The Passover Seder means order, it's a structure, is actually a journey. I like to refer to it, the 15 steps to psychological freedom. But to do so, we need to understand what is freedom and what is slavery, because that takes on many different forms. Ostensibly, many people will say freedom, slavery. Slavery is when someone has enslaved another person. We've seen examples of it, whether it's the black slavery in the beginning of the American slavery in the beginning of the founding of this country, or different forms of slavery where one nation has subjugated another, putting them into prison, whether it's physical prison or concentration camps. But it's much deeper than that. You can be technically a free person without shackles and not behind any bars and no ball and chain, but be completely shackled emotionally and psychologically to your own vices, to your own ugly voices, to your own fears and your own insecurities. And addictions. Is addiction not a form of slavery? Maybe the worst type. And especially the ones that allow you to deceive yourself into thinking that there's no addiction. It's called a functioning addict. Or even worse, someone who feels it's all good. The Baal Shem Tov puts it this way, that there's a darkness, and there's a darkness that conceals the darkness. That you don't even know it's dark. It's one thing you know. And awareness is half the cure. What happens if you're not even aware? So maybe yourself and maybe somebody else around you. So how do you deal with that? And again, every remedy has been offered. Some legitimate, some not legitimate, some cockamamie, some desperate attempts. So what does this 3,337-year formula teach us? The first thing we have to focus on is, who are you? Let us say you are in a state where some way you're enslaved, some way you're trapped in some form of prison, psychological, emotional prison. The first thing, the single most important thing is to know, is that you? Does that define you? Is that your identity? Because the issue here is not just the trauma that you experience, not just the pain and the suffering, is that if you think it's you, then there's no way out. But if you know it's not you, it's what you're experiencing, then the hope is, okay, so how do we get the real you to emerge and not allow this superimposed form of traps and slavery to keep you in its tentacles hostage? So the first step is to understand that you, first and foremost, are your soul. And your soul is pure, divine, untouched. Think of the freshly fallen snow. Think of a newborn child. Even when that child is, God forbid, hurt, one way or another, the purity does not get annihilated, ever. It can go undercover, and it can be concealed. And you yourself may not even be aware of it. But it never, ever disappears. So when you think of the psychologists that use the analogy of the inner child always remains intact, but undercover, hiding. It's hiding out of fear. So in many ways, it's about uncovering that inner child. This goes back to the very essence of what Passover is all about the children. The actual children, but also the children within, the child within you. So the first step is to be aware that you are not defined by your suffering. You're not defined by any of your setbacks. You're not defined by anything that happened to you. It happened to you, but it's not you. The problem is, when these things happen, they become so overwhelming that they convince you that is you, because you have no other alternative. Who else is me if not that? So we need to come to understand that there's another part of you that you need to become aware of, and that is the pure you, the pure version of who you are. In a way, yes, the child before any hurt has happened. And that is the soul. So this journey requires getting to know your soul. If I were able to sum up all the healthiest form of therapy for all people, it would be, let us introduce the soul into your life. Now, obviously, we understand, just like when you go into an emergency room, you have to stop the bleeding. You need short-term solutions for a person who's right now in pain. But it's a short-term solution until we can stabilize things. But the sustainable solution, get to know your soul. The more you know your soul, the more you see, that's who I am. And everything else is superimposed. That's not minimizing the pain. That's not in any way suggesting it didn't happen, God forbid. We're not going to denial here and silencing and in any way covering up or minimizing. We're actually broadening our horizons to learn that there's more to you than you may ever know. And that more to you is much, much bigger than the part that you do know. So in a way, this requires a form of humility. Because if you're convinced you know everything that you need to know about yourself, and a part of it is the traumas that dominate and obsess your life, whether overtly or covertly, the demons that you're fighting, the negativity, the fears, and you're convinced this is your map, your true reality, that becomes the worst enemy, that you're not even allowing fresh air into the picture. That would be like living in a toxic environment and never opening the window because you're convinced that's all there is. There is no fresh air. So the first thing is you need to know that's not you, and that's not the natural you, and there is fresh air. That requires humility. So it's no surprise that the 12-step program, which is 3 steps less than the 15-step program of the Seder, and I'm not suggesting the Seder is a purely type of group therapy, but I would say the 12 steps definitely borrow ideas from there, is that I surrender and I accept that I'm not my own power, that I need a higher power to resolve my issues. That's a humble statement, that you need something more than your own perspective. And you bring that fresh air by opening up to a new perspective. And what is that perspective? Your soul. Your unfettered soul. That no matter what has happened to you, the soul ultimately, at least at its core, has never become damaged. So you're not damaged goods. You're not defined. Your identity is not your pain. Your identity is not your suffering. It's that pure soul. So what does that soul look like? It expresses itself in your life. Those moments of joy, even the moments of sadness, of awareness, magical moments, moments of transcendence. A moment where you really experience something that's beyond the immediate, beyond your senses. In many ways, that's how the journey begins. Getting comfortable with another part of yourself. So that requires study, reading, gaining the knowledge, what is a soul like, and seeing it resonate in your life. Music is an excellent tool that helps us access it, because music transports you to another time and place. It touches your heart and soul. It could be a narrative, a story that you read, hearing someone speak to you. The last thing you want is just to continue doing what you've done in the past. Insanity, doing the same thing and expecting different results. You need to bring fresh air into your life. And that can be in the guise of another person, a new class, a new book, a new song. That's not so easy, because comfort zones are very powerful. They exert tremendous power, inertia does. And as we know, the rule of the path of least resistance, most people will choose that path. Whatever is easier. The known evil is harder than the unknown. Even if the unknown may be good, because you know it. You've gotten comfortable with it. Those routines can be your very trap. So that's why when we say, Manishtana, how is this night different than all nights? Different. Something new. It has to feel different. That's why it's so ironic when I hear people say, well, Passover Seder came and went, it was exactly like last year. Then it wasn't different. You have to think different. You have to feel different. You have to act different. Because if you think what you thought, and you say what you said, and you feel what you felt, and you do what you did, you know what you're going to have, what you had. It's a mathematical certainty. And that difference is usually, as I said, it can be a new person, it can be a new friend, it can be a new book, it can be a new idea. But it's getting out of your comfort zone. So we all have what we call in Hebrew our Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim means limits, constraints, dire straits, our trappings that keep us trapped and hold us hostage in one way or another. And they're usually very deeply emotional and psychological. And we're not even aware of the extent. Fear is one of those forces that paralyze you, but you don't even see the enemy. It's invisible. But what exposes it when you start introducing light and the light of your soul, that free-spiritedness. And even if at the beginning it may sound like that's not really my natural self, introduce a little of it. And this goes back again. What does your soul look like? What is your soul interested in? It's not interested in money. It's not interested in power or control. It's interested in understanding its transcendent mission. To use your gifts, your blessings, your skills, your opportunities to some way make the world a better place. Your soul is a giver, not a taker. It expresses gratitude. All the noble values that we cherish are soulful. Kindness, virtue, compassion, empathy. So the more you express that, the more you're exercising the muscles of your soul. Or you go back to your default, which is thus that person that you defined yourself as the one who has suffered, the one who may be in pain. Doesn't mean you're always in pain, but is affected by that. So it's another consciousness that we want to introduce into the picture. And that's why you'll see all the differences. Instead of eating bread, which we eat regularly, we eat matzah. Makes you right away think, what is this cracker? Was not allowed to rise. It's the bread of humility, as opposed to the bread of arrogance, of the ego. Now, bread is not a bad thing, but it can get bad when it becomes the only definition of your life, the inflated ego. It has to be harnessed. We eat bitter herbs to remind ourselves of empathy, not just of pain, of empathy. Now, for a detailed structure of the Seder, and each one of the steps, the 15 steps, as well as all the components of the Seder, some of them I just mentioned, all you have to do is go to meaningfullife.com and write Seder, the soul of the Seder, and you'll find plenty of resources and material that you can print out, some of it beautifully designed, that you can use as a companion. But you have to understand it's all that journey, discovering your soul, and recognizing that that is the dominant part of your life. And the more you have that in your life, the less significant, not less as in like it didn't happen, but less significant. It pales in comparison. So if your entire life is built on one particular experience or set of experiences, and that's all you have, and those experiences were not very positive, where do you go? But if you introduce new experiences, then you start saying, 1 second, compared to my broader horizons, you're standing on top of the mountain, and you see the entire horizon. What's that little speck? What significance does it have? Again, it doesn't mean it goes away, but it has context. Your panorama has broadened, has expanded. That's really the essence of it. But the work required is getting to know that part of the soul. And children help us tremendously. That's why they're so central. The child and also the inner child. To access memories of a better time, a better place. Not to return back there, not to escape, but to try to recreate. If you're a parent, you know how the opportunity you have. You can relive your entire life through your children. Because what may have gone wrong or was not done perfectly, you can correct. And in the process, you're healing yourself as well. But we go back to the awareness. Many people will say today, we don't need exodus from anything. Look at the prosperity we have. Look at the comforts we have. Look at the technologies, the medical breakthroughs. Let me ask you, how is that affecting your personal relationships? We always knew technology was neutral. Junk in, junk out. Garbage in, garbage out. If you have a beautiful relationship, it can enhance it. But if you don't, it's not going to create it. Show me somewhere that technology actually created love. Yes, you may have met somebody online, but the relationship idea all begins with heart to heart, person to person. So the awareness of knowing that you may be more hostage than you think you are. Unfortunately, it sometimes takes hitting rock bottom or seeing failure, experiencing loss, that a person comes to realize that. I have a sense that collectively we are at that breaking point. There's that critical mass of people who feel something's missing in my life. Either due to the fact growing up in homes that were not nurturing and protecting and validating, different forms of abandonment we may have experienced. And abandonment, of course, touches upon the very core of healthy attachments that we need in our lives. So we look for them in different ways. But now there's a certain collective sense of uneasiness, restlessness, and different factors have contributed to it, including COVID, including the disruptions that we're experiencing now. So disruptions can be very unsettling and unnerving, but they can also be openings, because they cause you to think, 1 second, things are not working exactly as I thought. That's that opening. The cracks where the light comes, how the light gets in. But you have to see it that way. So in a way, the pains that they experienced back then over 3 millennia ago woke them up. And as they woke up, they came to realize that there's a deeper truth, a higher truth. And they came to realize that that which doesn't kill me makes me stronger. An actual verse in the book of Exodus, as they were afflicted in direct proportion to their oppression, they thrived and they blossomed and they flourished. How's that possible? But look in life. What does pressure do? Yes, pressure could overwhelm, pressure can demoralize and make you feel defeated, but it could also bring out the best in you. You press an olive, you get the oil out of it. You don't know how strong you are, just like a tea bag, until you put it into hot water. And that's how we have to look at life. So even the setbacks not only don't define you, but look at it with the right perspective, because you have a soul that's navigating. So then the pains and the setbacks become springboards for growth. The tears of pain become raindrops for tremendous growth. But it all comes down to the awareness. Awareness that you are not in a situation where you're not in the right, awareness that there's a problem, let's put it that way. And then understanding and discovering that there's more to you. Find out what that more is. I've written a book called The Spiritual Guide to Counting the Omer. It's essentially like a blueprint, a roadmap through our emotional psyche. The 7 key emotions within us, and 7, each one encompassing another 7, hence 49 days. Which begins literally the second day of Passover is when we do the counting. But it's much more than counting. It's introspection, it's soul searching, it's character refinement, it's personality development. It's looking at yourself with an x-ray. Let me look at the love within my soul. Let me look at the discipline within my soul. Let me look at the empathy, the determination, the humility, the bonding, the dignity. And then each one of them breaking it down further into 7. Check it out. My Omer. We have a beautiful app. It's a free app. Check it out. My Omer app. It's a book called The Spiritual Guide to Counting the Omer. Again, you can find it online. But these are all examples of methods and ways to look inside yourself. But before you look inside yourself, you need to have a motivation. Why should I? Everything's going all right. That's usually not a great motivator and catalyst for movement. Movement comes when something compels you to move. So it's either you feel a certain angst, healthy angst, maybe not so healthy, but some angst, something that is pushing you, that's causing you to be restless. Comfort zones are not good for growth. They're comfortable, that's why they're called comfort zones, but they're not necessarily growthful. So I'm hoping that no one needs to hit rock bottom to get there. But everybody has something that, start thinking about your life, your relationships, your commitments. Somewhere something will expose itself as being a Mitzrayim in your life, something that needs to be healed. And it's not like we're digging for trouble. It's just being honest. And even if things are good, there's an expression in Yiddish, if things are good, if good is better, not better. So we're always, as human beings, should always be motivated to grow. And here we have this tremendous opportunity. And indeed you find, throughout the Passover Seder, you do find the breaking of the matzah, which is another form of a humbling experience. But it's always to reveal something greater. So even though here you have something in front of your eyes that you've experienced, you get to realize there's another me, a greater me. And that greater you, the soul, is always free. Imagine living on that level. All of us can access that. The next step is yours. But to really do this right, as I said, there are many resources out there. You can check out meaningfullife.com. You'll find quite extensive resources around how to do a Seder, and most importantly, how to apply the psychological, emotional lessons to finding personal freedom, whatever it is that we're struggling with. So I want to conclude with a blessing that everyone should have a liberating, emancipating, transcendent, and meaningful Passover. And may the message spread all over the world to every person on this earth, every man, woman, and child. And may we become freer human beings, freed from these shackles, so we can experience the great potential that is waiting for you. Unleash this infinite power that lies within each one of us. Thank you so much. This has been Simon Jacobson. MeaningfulLife.com is our website where you can find this and many other materials. Check it out. Please subscribe to our offering. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. And love to hear your thoughts, your feedback, your comments. And of course, above all, share. Please share with others. I thank you again, and everyone have a very happy holiday.
This program is brought to you by the Meaningful Life Center. Please help us continue our programs. Make even a small contribution at meaningfullife.com/donate.